Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take complex subjects, dig into the sources, and give you the clear, well-informed picture.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're really getting into something powerful, something that shapes politics across the globe. The cult of personality, or CUP, as we'll probably call it.
Yeah, it's a term that might sound a bit old-fashioned, maybe makes you think of the 20th century, but believe me, the playbook has been seriously updated for our digital world.
So our mission today is pretty clear then. Define it properly, look at how it evolved.
Exactly. We'll trace it from, ancient god kings right up to what we see happening on social media today. And we'll look closely at some recent events that just perfectly showcase how it works now in the 21st century.
Okay, let's jump right in. The core definition. Because we're not just talking about a leader being really popular, are we?
Not at all. A cult of personality, based on the academic work we've looked at, is really the result of a deliberate, conscious push to create this idealized image. Heroic, maybe even superhuman.
And how do they pull that off?
Well, it's through constant, nonstop flattery, praise that often goes way over the top, and just hammering the message home through state channels. It's totally manufactured influence.
Right, and you mentioned a shift. What's the big difference between now and, say, ancient times?
The huge shift, the really shocking thing, is how they establish legitimacy. It used to be about, the divine right of kings, bloodlines, that sort of thing.
Power handed down from God or through family?
Precisely, but now that's gone. It's been replaced by sophisticated social engineering, massive propaganda efforts, and really calculated use of mass media. They create this aura of authority, of being untouchable.
But it's grounded differently.
Completely. It's secular, it's tech-driven, still aiming for absolute control, just using very modern tools.
So power moves from the divine to the digital, in a way. #2.
Yeah.
The origins and evolution of the cult of personality.
Yeah, and if you look back, that old reverence wasn't something they had to build in the same way. It was just baked into the structure. Monarchs were treated with this incredible reverence.
Almost religious.
Definitely. Often seen as having superhuman qualities or being God's representative on Earth.
Give us some classic examples of that.
Oh, easy. Ancient Egypt, the pharaohs were literally seen as god kings. The Roman Empire had its imperial cult, deifying emperors after death, which was a neat political trick for unity.
Cover.
Then you have Imperial Japan, where the emperor was divine. In China, the emperor was the son of heaven. And in medieval Europe, the whole divine right of king's doctrine.
Which meant disagreeing with the king was like disagreeing with God.
Exactly. It was blasphemy and treason. Very hard to argue against that.
So you couldn't really question it, but that divine shield, it started to wear thin eventually.
It did. Come the 18th, 19th centuries, you get the Enlightenment, democratic ideas spreading, secularism. People start questioning power that isn't based on their consent. That old God-given aura got much harder to sell.
But leaders still found ways to keep that mystique going, even without the divine angle.
Oh, absolutely. They adapted. They started using early forms of mass communication to keep that special image alive.
This is where those little photo cards come in. The carte de visite.
Exactly, the carte de visite. Tiny, mass-produced photos, super popular in the mid-19th century. Think Napoleon III in France, Queen Victoria in the UK. They really leaned into this.
So it was like early branding.
Kind of. It wasn't just, look, here's the leader. It was about standardizing their image, making it official, and getting it out there cheaply and widely. Suddenly, millions of people could have the same government-approved picture of their ruler in their own homes.
Bringing the leader's image right into daily life, reinforcing that connection, that idealized view.
It was a first step in mass image control. But yeah, standardizing the image was crucial. Still, the real revolution, the thing that enabled the modern cop, that was 20th century tech. Radio. It was the catalyst. Suddenly, leaders could talk directly to everyone, bypass newspapers, bypass local officials. Just their voice, their message, instantly, intimately everywhere.
It must have been incredibly powerful.
It led straight to the most infamous, deeply embedded personality cults we know. It often morphed into what some historians call a kind of political religion. Think Stalin, Hitler. Their voices constantly on the airwaves, crafting this weirdly personal, yet totally controlled relationship with millions.
It's fascinating, though, that people saw the danger quite early on. You mentioned the term cult of personality popping up in English way back in the 1800s.
Yeah, around 1800 to 1850. Initially, it wasn't political. It was tied to romanticism, the cult of genius, adoring some great artist or writer.
But Marx applied it politically.
Karl Marx, yeah. He cited for the first known political use in 1877. He absolutely hated the personan cultus, the personality cult, especially in revolutionary movements.
Why was his objection?
He saw it as a dangerous distraction. Focusing on one charismatic leader, he thought, pulled attention away from the actual ideology, the collective effort. It was, for him, a kind of intellectual laziness, follow the person, not the principles.
And looking back, he was spot on, wasn't he? That warning really predicted what came next with authoritarian regimes.
Deeply prescient, yes. #tag3. The 5 defining characteristics of modern personality cults.
Okay, so that history brings us to the modern version.
Hmm.
And we have this analysis from historian Jan Plamper. He lays out 5 key things that make today's personality cults different. These are the tools of this secular manipulation we talked about.
Right, and these 5 characteristics are really vital if you want to grasp why a modern cop, whether it's in an obviously totalitarian state or maybe even bubbling up in a democracy, works differently than, say, ancient Rome's imperial cult.
Let's go through them. First one, they're secular, and crucially, they're rooted in this idea of popular sovereignty.
Exactly. They're not asking you to believe the leader is divine. They're asking for political devotion based on the claim that the leader is the true voice of the people, the embodiment of the popular will.
So legitimacy comes from seeming democratic.
Seeming democratic, yes. It's all about performing support. Think massive, staged rallies designed to look spontaneous, maybe manipulated polls showing overwhelming approval, demanding public displays of loyalty. The power comes from claiming everyone loves the leader, even if that love is manufactured or forced.
Okay. Second point from Plamper. Historically, the targets are almost always men. He does note a patriarchal trend. Those sources also mention later female examples exist.
Yes, that's historically been the pattern, though not exclusively, especially more recently.
Third point, and this feels very 20th century and beyond, they target the entire population.
This is huge. Unlike ancient cults focused on the court or the elite, modern tools, mass media, state education let the cult reach everyone, from the top officials down to the average person on the street, and critically indoctrinating children through schools.
That universal reach connects to the next 2 points, which are all about technology and control. Number 4, they heavily use mass media.
Absolutely essential. That perfect, idealized image of the leader has to be everywhere, all the time, manufactured and inescapable.
And the 5th point ties it all together. They really only take root where mass media can be controlled enough to shut down rival cults.
Yes. This is critical. It's not just about promoting the leader. It's about actively suppressing anyone else who might become a heroic figure. A popular general, a successful artist, a charismatic opposition leader. The state-controlled media works to make sure they never gain enough traction to challenge the leader's unique supreme status. It's about eliminating the competition for public affection.
That idea of total control fits with what Thomas A. Wright talked about, the image cultivation.
Yeah.
He said it's about creating this idealized, almost godlike public image.
Consciously molded, yeah. Through nonstop propaganda, endless media exposure.
And the goal.
The goal is for the leader to be able to manipulate people based purely on the influence of that image. The power isn't in their policies or actions anymore. It resides in the carefully crafted public personality. The image becomes the reality.
But that image needs fertile ground to grow in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Adrian Popan pointed out that you need certain societal conditions already in place.
Exactly. It doesn't just happen anywhere. Popan identifies this dangerous mix of structural factors. He talks about patrimonialism and clientelism being widespread.
Okay, let's break those down. Patrimonialism.
Patrimonialism is basically when the leader treats the whole country, its resources, its offices, everything like their own personal property, like it's their family estate. The line between their private interests and the public good just vanishes. They don't follow the law. They are the law because the state is theirs.
Wow. And clientelism.
That's the system of exchanging loyalty for favors. It's not about merit or following the rules. The leader hands out government jobs, lucrative contracts, maybe just cash or gifts, to people purely based on their personal loyalty. It keeps followers locked in.
So the state is the leader's property, and loyalty is bought and paid for.
Right, and when you have that combination, Popan adds 2 more conditions. A near total lack of dissidence, because dissent isn't just political disagreement, it's like being ungrateful or stealing from the leader personally.
Makes sense.
And finally, this really chilling thing. Pervasive, systematic falsification throughout the culture.
Meaning everyone just lies.
It's more than that. It means a culture where lies are not just told, but expected. manipulating history, faking statistics, making impossible claims about the leader's genius. Everyone knows it's happening, everyone knows it's false, but they have to play along, pretend to believe it, just to survive or get ahead.
That sounds incredibly toxic.
It is. And that toxic brew, the leader owns everything. Loyalty is bought, nobody dares disagree, and lies are everywhere. That's the perfect breeding ground for a personality cult to take root and become almost impossible to break.
Looking back at the 20th century, you can really see how media tech allowed those toxic conditions to spread. First radio, then film, newsreels.
Yeah, the early dictators were masters of this. Mussolini, for example, used film brilliantly. He crafted this image of Il Duce, always active, powerful, decisive, caught in these dramatic poses. It created this sense of connection with the masses, even while he was actually becoming more isolated.
It masked the reality.
Totally. But the 21st century, that brought a whole new level. The internet, social media, the nonstop news cycle, it didn't just speed things up, it created the perfect storm for targeted disinformation.
Algorithmic amplification. Filter bubbles.
Exactly. This is where it gets really dangerous. The digital world lets deceptive information spread incredibly fast, tailored to individuals, reinforcing their biases. It builds these echo chambers where followers only hear affirmation.
And the result?
The result is stark. You can measure it. The rise of personality cults globally tracks very closely with the rise of authoritarian governments and the decline of democratic norms. Modern media just pours gasoline on the campfire.
Which brings up that question from sociologist Robert Bellah. Is the media just reflecting these cults, or is it actually creating them? Creating the very charisma we associate with these leaders?
It's often impossible to untangle, isn't it? Bellah specifically pointed to American politics, saying leader personalities dominate there perhaps more than anywhere else in the modern world. And he suggested that what we call charisma might often be almost entirely manufactured by media exposure.
So charisma isn't necessarily some innate magic quality anymore.
Less and less. It can be an output. Think about it. Careful staging, the right camera angles, edited sound bites, constant message control, projecting specific emotions on cue strength, anger, empathy. Whatever serves the image.
Control the narrative means we only see the moments that fit the brand.
Precisely. You rarely see the leader looking tired or unsure or caught off guard, and the 24/7 news cycle demands they're always there, always visible, filling the space. That engineered omnipresence can feel like real gravitas, real charisma. It's a performance.
A performance amplified a million times online.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Looking at some specific examples from the sources really brings these techniques to life.
Where should we start?
How about Ferdinand Marcos in the Philippines? He built an incredibly effective cop over 2 decades. Analysts back then were comparing his methods directly to Stalin and Hitler. That's how sophisticated it was.
Wow. What were his main tools? You mentioned fear and projecting progress.
Exactly that mix. Fear was huge. He constantly used red scare tactics. They called it red tagging locally. Anyone who disagreed, any activist, was branded a dangerous communist. It justified cracking down.
And the crackdown involved media control.
Absolutely central.
Wow.
When he declared martial law in 1972, one of the first things he did was seize control of all the newspapers, radio, TV stations. He systematically silenced all criticism.
So control the fear narrative, control the information flow. What about the positive image he projected?
That was built on big, visible projects, bridges, roads, buildings, often funded by foreign loans. These were presented as proof of national progress under his strong leadership. He framed it all under this banner of constitutional authoritarianism and building a new society.
Selling discipline as progress.
While behind the scenes, consolidating power and famously enriching himself and his family massively. And then there was the mythology.
The war hero stories.
Huge, elaborate, and largely false stories about his supposed heroic exploits in World War II. He even had a Mount Rushmore-style monument carved with his face. This mythology was relentlessly pushed.
And disturbingly, the sources say that mythology persists. People are still trying to rewrite that history.
Yes, there are ongoing, well-documented efforts at historical negationism or revisionism, trying to whitewash the Marcos era in textbooks and online even today. The cult's legacy is actively being fought over.
Okay, let's shift to a more contemporary example. Narendra Modi in India.
Yeah.
He's often criticized for building a personality cult.
Yes, and his personal popularity, that carefully cultivated image, is frequently cited as the absolute key factor in the BJP party's massive electoral victories.
What's interesting here is how it seems to blend modern political branding with older regional traditions of reverence, almost a throwback.
It does have that element. You had a chief minister calling him superhuman, saying he had traces of God. That taps into deep cultural roots. The sources link it to traditions of hero worship, common for celebrities in India, and specifically the concept of bhakti finding its way into politics.
Bhakti, that's spiritual devotion, right?
Traditionally, yes. Intense, unconditional devotion, usually to a deity. When you apply that same level of adoration to a political leader, it encourages a kind of loyalty that bypasses rational policy debate. It becomes about faith in the leader himself.
And Modi himself has leaned into this. The sources mention a statement he made during the 2024 elections.
A very direct statement. He said he believed he was sent directly by God to serve a special purpose on earth. That's about as close to claiming a divine mandate as you can get in a modern secular democracy.
And the symbolic actions reinforce this. The suit, for instance.
Ah, yes. The famous suit he wore when meeting President Obama in 2015. It had his own name, Narendra Modi, woven into the pinstripes over and over again in tiny letters.
Like a Namavali.
Exactly like a Hindu Namavali, a sacred cloth embroidered with the names of gods. It was an incredibly powerful symbolic act, merging personal identity with a sense of divine mission. That suit, by the way, sold for a fortune at auction.
And naming the world's biggest cricket stadium after himself.
Another huge, permanent, physical marker. It cements his name onto the landscape, quite literally. It's classic monument building, a hallmark of personality cults.
That drive for monuments connects him to figures like Mussolini, doesn't it? The sources say Mussolini really invented the whole dictator is cult figure thing in the 1920s.
Mussolini was the blueprint in many ways, styled as Il Duce, the leader. His propaganda machine was relentless in crafting this image of invincibility, of physical prowess.
They used things like assassination attempts.
Absolutely. The fact he survived attempts on his life or was wounded in the war, this was spun into a narrative of mystical protection, almost supernatural endurance. They even compared his shrapnel wounds to the arrows piercing St. Sebastian.
Using religious imagery again, but twisting it.
Twisting it to say, unlike the martyr, Il Duce survives, he overcomes. It builds that Superman myth, and he was obsessed with his visual image.
Personally approving photos.
Personally approving or rejecting every photo. He had to look powerful, dynamic, youthful, decisive. Total image control.
Now compare that to Juan Perón in Argentina. He and his wife, Evita, built their cult not just through media, but by fundamentally reshaping education.
The Peronist cult was deeply invasive. They made Evita's biography, La Raison de mi vida, The Reason for My Life, required reading in every school in Argentina.
Indoctrination from childhood.
Exactly. Plus, they censored the press, took over TV and radio, and ruthlessly went after anyone who opposed them.
And the sources mentioned something truly shocking about universities.
A massive intellectual purge. The Perón regime fired something like 20,000 university professors and academics.
20,000.
That's the figure cited. Anyone who didn't toe the party line, who wouldn't conform to the Peronist ideology, it caused a huge brain drain and crippled academic freedom for years. It shows the cult wasn't just about adoration, it was a tool to gut society's ability to think critically.
Finally, the sources bring up the U.S. context, mentioning that academics often describe Trumpism as fitting the cop model.
Yes, due to that intense, unquestioning loyalty some followers display, an idealization that seems to go beyond normal political support. The sources even mention a satirical poster from 2025 depicting him as a monarch, which captures that sense of a figure elevated beyond a typical democratic leader.
So looking across these examples, Mussolini, Marcos, Modi, Perón, Trump, the techniques adapt. But the core elements seem consistent, whether it's an overt dictatorship or within a democracy.
That's the key takeaway. The tools, image management, demanding loyalty, using media, suppressing rivals, they're transferable. The underlying mechanics of the modern cop work across different political systems.
Okay, let's bring this right into the present day. The sources give us this incredible, almost real-time example of these dynamics playing out internationally. The recent Gaza Peace Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, co-hosted by Donald Trump and Egypt's President Sisi.
Yes, this summit, with over 20 world leaders, became a fascinating stage, not just for diplomacy, but for observing how this personalized politics, this network of flattery and loyalty among certain leaders, actually operates in practice.
The interaction between Trump and Pakistan's Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, was particularly striking, wasn't it?
Absolutely textbook. Sharif was invited by Trump to speak, and he used that platform almost entirely for effusive praise. He gave Trump all the credit. That was the phrase used for supposedly stopping a war between India and Pakistan after some cross-border incidents back in May.
So, less policy, more. Adder.
Pure, unadulterated public flattery. He didn't just thank Trump, he nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Right there, on the global stage. He kept repeating it, this great president, genuinely a man of peace, demanding the 2026 prize for him. He even claimed Trump had saved millions of lives and was the man this world needed most. Hyperbole doesn't quite cover it.
And how did Trump react to this outpouring?
Immediately and very personally. He called Sharif's words beautiful, joked, "Wow, didn't expect that. Let's go home, everybody." Classic Trump deflection. But the more telling part, showing that personalized transaction.
What was that?
He went off script to praise Pakistan's army chief, Asim Munir, calling him his favorite field marshal. Munir wasn't even at the summit.
So Sharif delivers the public flattery.
And Trump responds with this direct personal validation for someone important back in Sharif's country. It reinforces that personal hierarchy recognition flows directly from the leader, bypassing normal protocols. It's loyalty rewarded instantly.
And Trump managed to balance his praise, didn't he? He also made sure to mention India's leader.
Masterfully played. He called India a great country, praised his good friend at the top, Prime Minister Modi saying he'd done a fantastic job, then predicted India and Pakistan would live very nicely together. And Modi, in turn, publicly praised Trump's unwavering peace efforts.
It's like a performance of mutual admiration, papering over complex geopolitics with personal relationships.
Exactly. Personal loyalty and image management trumping traditional diplomacy. And we saw this dynamic even more starkly just before the summit, during Trump's visit to Israel.
With Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yes. Netanyahu, who's facing his own legal battles, went all out, called Trump the greatest friend that the state of Israel has ever had in the White House, and then he nominated Trump for the Israel Prize, their highest civilian honor.
Quid pro quo.
Well, Trump immediately used his speech to Israel's parliament, the Knesset, to publicly ask Israel's president to pardon Netanyahu for his ongoing corruption trial.
Wow. That's a direct intervention in another country's judicial process.
Highly personal, highly political. It shouts that the personal bond, the loyalty between these two figures, is more important than the legal system. That's the cult dynamic writ large.
Now, amidst all this carefully staged praise, there was that unscripted moment that went viral involving Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni.
Ah, yes. The eye roll.
Her expression described as surprised, maybe even an eye roll, while Sharif was lavishing praise on Trump. It became a huge meme.
And the reactions were instantly polarized, which is typical of anything touching a cop figure. Some saw her expression as a clear judgment on the over-the-top, sycophantic flattery being directed at Trump.
But others had a different take.
Others argued, hang on, Meloni's a right-wing leader, generally aligns with Trump on policy. They suggested her look was actually directed at French President Macron, who she was talking to at the time, maybe exasperation with him, not Trump. The point is, the moment itself forced people to take sides immediately.
You're either with the praise or against the leader. No middle ground.
Precisely. It illustrates how the cult phenomenon itself polarizes everything around it.
Even Trump himself seemed aware of these dynamics, making that comment about liking tough people.
Yeah, that self-referential moment where he said he might have a personality problem because he prefers negotiating with tough people over soft, easy ones. It frames his affinity for other strongmen, other cop-style leaders, as just a personal quirk rather than a strategic alignment based on shared methods of rule. So wrapping this all up, what does our deep dive tell us?
I think the clearest thing is that the cult of personality isn't some dusty historical artifact. It's fundamentally changed.
It's moved beyond bloodlines or God's will.
Completely. It's now about these really sophisticated secular systems, and they're built on deliberately, systematically manipulating mass media, digital platforms, the whole information environment.
And the foundation, the legitimacy, it rests on this idea of popular sovereignty, but a version that's completely manufactured. Exactly. The public has to be convinced, through relentless messaging, that they chose this leader, that they adore this idealized, heroic figure, even if that adoration is actually engineered through propaganda or social media algorithms or even coercion.
So the modern risk is maybe even greater, because these tools are so powerful.
I think so. This dependence on manufactured charisma, on nonstop propaganda, on disinformation that travels at light speed, it makes leaders who rely on this very prone to authoritarianism.
Because maintaining the cult image becomes the top priority.
It has to be, which means you must suppress dissent. You must crush potential rivals. You need total control over the narrative, just like we saw with prone-firing academics or Marcos using martial law to silence the press. The cult demands conformity.
And that political theater we saw at the Gaza Summit, The prize nominations, the public declarations of friendship and loyalty, that's not just talk.
Far from it. It's the essential performance. It's the continuous global effort needed to keep these personalized power structures afloat. It replaces genuine diplomacy with transactions of personal loyalty and flattery.
Okay, so thinking about the future. We know these cults can be incredibly powerful, deeply embedded. Think Mao's portraits everywhere, Perón controlling the schools.
But we also have examples like the source mentioning Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in Bangladesh, where his personality cult was systematically dismantled after his daughter's government fell. It shows these constructs can be taken down, sometimes quite quickly.
Which leads us to the final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Given everything we've discussed, the speed of information, the power of digital manipulation, the creation of echo chambers, does this digital age ultimately make these carefully constructed leadership images stronger, more resilient, harder to break?
Or does the very speed and volatility of the internet, the potential for viral criticism, for counter-narratives to spread just as quickly, actually make these idealized images more fragile, more vulnerable to sudden collapse when the carefully crafted narrative finally cracks?
What happens when that manufactured charisma, that perfect image, suddenly fails to load? That's something to think about.